Welcome, everyone. I'm Kristen Saroff, a librarian here with New Hanover County Public Library, and I am excited to be here today with Lloyd Singleton, the director of the New Hanover County Arboretum, for the first of our virtual book discussions for The Home Place as part of our Community Read Initiative, Read Across the County. The Read Across the County program is a collaboration between New Hanover County Public Library and the county's Office of Diversity and Equity, and is sponsored by the Friends of the Library. Read Across the County celebrates New Hanover County's families, diversity, and unique outdoor environment, and aspires to bring people of different ages and backgrounds together for a community-wide summer of reading. Also with me today behind the scenes is Claire White, our marketing and technology librarian. She will be monitoring the chat, and she's going to also send through some interactive surveys as our discussion goes along. So to start out, I think she's going to go ahead and send through a poll asking two questions. We're curious if you have been to the Arboretum, and have you read The Home Place, the book that we're discussing today? So you can go ahead and submit those results for us. That would be great. All right, thank you, Claire. So this week's discussion is about nature and the home place, which is very apt because the home place begins with Lanham stating that I am a man in love with nature. And throughout the memoir, he details his evolving relationship with the natural world around him, through both his career as a scientist and professor and his hobbies as both a birder and a hunter, which I found really interesting, his discussion of how he's both a birder and a hunter. Sometimes you don't think that those two things go together, but he really did a good job explaining how he feels like both of those are worthwhile natural endeavors, which I really enjoyed. And through all of these things, he shows his appreciation for an understanding of the world around him. Throughout, he explains how his relationship with nature impacts his choices in his life, which Lloyd, I found really interesting, how he was originally going to school to be an engineer and then decided suddenly to switch tactics and become a wildlife biologist instead. And do you think, I don't know if you have a perspective on this, Lloyd, do you think he would have made those same decisions if he hadn't been surrounded by nature at an early age? And what about those of us who grow up and live in an urban environment? Do you think there's a difference there?
I think there is. I think there's something innate with the connection of a young person with nature. If they're not exposed to it, I don't know that they even know those fields exist. So I think it's definitely, and that's one of the things that I am passionate about, is getting youth involved in nature, whether it's at the Arboretum or a local park. But we need to get the kids in touch with things of nature so they understand they're part of a bigger ecosystem.
Absolutely. And as Lanham goes along, he talks about how he's just surrounded by nature as he grows up. He interestingly, on pages 27 and 28, talks about how different trees have different purposes and how you would use some, for firewood, some for building a fence. And that's something I wouldn't even have thought of, that, different trees would provide different benefits for you. And then I know we were talking earlier that his grandmother, on page 46, he talks about her use of herbs and how things most would call weeds, all of it had a higher purpose in her world.
I think one in particular that was interesting to me is the dog fennel that was referenced, because for so many of us, that's just seen as such an ugly plant, and it's tall and unruly. But when you do crush those leaves of dog fennel, you smell this amazing aroma and recognize it does have a lot of therapeutic value to it. So I think weeds, the best definition of weed is a plant that's not appreciated where it is. So we kind of need to change our perspective a bit on that and recognize that all plants do have a purpose. And love the fact she was able to turn something that most of us would think is unsightly into a real benefit, and teach that to her grandson.
Absolutely. Yes. And then they also had a farm there on the home place. And on page 122, Lanham talks about how Daddy occasionally spoke of selling off the herd, but it never happened. The cows were so much more than stress and labor to Daddy, because Lanham talks about how much effort it was to maintain these cows, but they were a release from things that he could not control. And I'm really interested in your perspective on the therapeutic value of nature, why people find nature to be so calming. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, I think with animals in particular, the idea of nurturing something and caring for it is very, very helpful. I mean,
Hmm.
we are part of a bigger ecosystem, and we have to recognize our responsibility to care for the earth as well as wildlife that are in it. Yeah, and very, very important, and I think very grounding for us spiritually and emotionally to do that. Um,
Absolutely.
don't forget your page 96 quote
Oh,
too, though.
yes.
It's one of my favorites.
I've expanded the walls of my spiritual existence beyond the pews and pulpit to include longleaf savannas, salt marshes, cove forests, and tall grass prairie.
Yeah,
Yes.
those are ecosystems that, although they're in his South Carolina town,
Mhm.
they are everywhere here as well. And I think that was particularly profound that those were seen as kind of a temple, really, a way to worship.
Absolutely. I found that really interesting in his memoir, how he talked about the different churches he went to, but that really he found his own church outside, just in the natural environment. And he didn't have to go to some, like the Grand Canyon or something to find it. It was just in the natural world right around where he was from, similar to the nature we have around us here in Wilmington.
Mhm.
So Wilmington is a more urban environment. What are some things that we could do to find this same kind of benefit in nature that he was able to find in the home place?
Well, I'd say take a walk through Longleaf Park and look up at those amazingly tall trees and just recognize that they're there for us, but they're so strong and sturdy. And longleaf, I'll tell you, they're one pine that actually has a taproot. So if people are worried about pine trees blowing over in hurricanes or whatever, it's probably a loblolly. It's probably not the longleaf, which was the most common pine in the southeast North Carolina area. And longleafs are incredibly sturdy and basically very resistant to winds. And so that I think of to me, I just look at the longleaf and I see all that resilience and that strength, and it's very inspiring to me. So that's one way to be inspired by nature.
Absolutely. All right. Another quote of his that I thought was really interesting from page 177 is, I think about land a lot. In fact, I am possessed by it. I think about the lay of the land, how it came to be, what natural forces have changed it, what human forces have mangled it, how concrete and asphalt doom it. I think about the promise it holds for the future and what history it preserves from the past. Is this something that you think about in your own work with nature and in the Arboretum?
I definitely do. Think back to the song, I think it was Joni Mitchell, "We paved paradise and put up a parking lot." I
Mhm.
mean, we have so much impervious surface now in New Hanover County that flooding is going to become an even bigger issue. And if we would change the way we do things, we do parking lots maybe that are gravel or porous concrete or paver bricks or something that lets the rain percolate through, then we could actually be a better part with nature and not so diametrically opposed to the nature forces that are going to come. They're going to provide excessive rain and flooding. And
Mhm.
so we really do need to change the way we impact our earth, particularly in an urban area. We need to make sure we have room for trees. We need to protect trees when we are doing development, and not just single trees. You need to, in fact, it's clumps of trees that are the ones that are safest for hurricanes. If you
Okay.
have a clump of trees and you take all but one out, that tree is then going to be very susceptible to winds because it isn't protected, doesn't share the burden with its neighbors that way. So let's retain groups of trees when we do our development. We're going to be better off.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And then page number 4, we're going back to the beginning, but I thought this quote was very profound. In all my time wandering, I've yet to have a wild creature question my identity. Not a single cardinal or ovenbird has ever paused in dawn song declaration to ask the reason for my being. And he's talking about this in relation to the fact that he's a Black man and he doesn't often see a lot of people of color out, birding or out hiking or in nature. And so sometimes people can think it's a little strange or odd. Do you think nature can play a role in bridging differences between people?
I certainly think it can. It's definitely a no judgment zone.
Mhm.
And I think when people are out in nature together, there's a whole lot less focus on our differences and more on the things that we have in common. So I find it to be a
Absolutely.
very good mutual experience for all kinds of diversity.
Great. Wonderful. I agree. And now, Lloyd, I would really love to give you the opportunity to talk about some of these local outdoor opportunities that we have in New Hanover County.
Okay. Well, first, I want to put a plug in for the New Hanover County Arboretum. We are a cooperative extension, which is a part of NC State University, and we have a number of different program areas that we bring to our community in areas of horticulture, both consumer, commercial, and therapeutic horticulture. We also have family consumer sciences education going on. We have 4-H youth development program. So we deliver this kind of research-based information and education to our community, but an extension director several decades ago had the foresight to say, well, we could do this, but let's do it from a beautiful spot. And so there was actually an initial grant and fundraising or whatever to create this beautiful 7.5-acre arboretum grounds for the cooperative extension. And it's wonderful because it actually does serve as a classroom. We have a lot of educational signage. We have almost all the plants labeled, and we do want people to be able to evaluate what grows well here, what textures and colors and foliage they like and might be able to use in their own backyard. But then also to inspire with really good design. I mean, some of the areas are just beautiful, whether it's the Japanese garden or kind of a wild looking native plant garden. There's a whole realm there that they can experience that. Also want to put a plug in for our koi. We have a whole lot of really large koi in this 6,500 square foot pond and they're practically tame. And the kids love to touch them and play with them and feed them. And it's a great experience to be with this other kind of animal that we don't normally commune with like that. And it's very accessible. So that's the Arboretum. We're free and open every day from 8 to 5. We encourage you to come visit, bring a picnic, just wander around or whatever. But then I find we're also very blessed in our area to have a lot of city and county parks. And Claire, at this point, if you don't mind sharing your screen, I want to let our audience know about a program called Park RX. And the website is parkrxamerica.org. And if you go to the prescribe tab, if you give it your location, you'll see that it will go ahead and pull up all of these parks that are within half a mile, 1 mile, 25 miles, or whatever you select there from your home location. And then this is going to be a great way to maybe have a bucket list. Maybe your goal should be in 2021 to visit every single Park RX site. But the concept of Park RX is because exercise is so helpful to our health that it can be prescribed by, for instance, by a doctor to say, hey, go take a walk at the Arboretum 3 times a week. But there's plenty of research to show that being in nature does a world of good for us health-wise. It lowers our blood pressure, it decreases our heart rate, and it's basically just a very easy way to have that mindfulness that is very important in our stressful lives. I think a lot of people discovered that during COVID too. There was a lot of emphasis on staying outdoors. You're safer from the transmission of virus disease, as well as having that communal time with nature is very comforting and calming. So highly recommend that. I think we're blessed with rivers and creeks and salt marshes, so many things just within a quick drive of anywhere in the Wilmington area, and you can experience some nature at your own pace.
Absolutely. So much to explore around here. I just went to the Arboretum for the first time last week and was so impressed. If you haven't been there, anyone in the audience, you really should. It's absolutely beautiful, a lovely spot to commune with nature and to learn a lot. If you want to learn about what grows best in your garden or what best to plant in your yard is the perfect place. There are plenty of people to talk to and things to learn there. So I was very impressed.
Thanks.
Would you like to talk about some of the programs coming up that you've got at the Arboretum,
Sure,
Lloyd?
I do. We're very happy to be the host for a Juneteenth celebration on Saturday evening. So here at the Arboretum, this is free and it's open to the public, but we've invited a number of Black-owned artisans to exhibit some of their wares. And then we're also going to have a nice ceremony with the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation and a wonderful Black church a cappella choir. Some other music happening. There will be a DJ. So it's just going to be a real festive time from 5:30 to 8:30 on Saturday, the 19th of June here at the Arboretum, and again, free of charge. And then on the 21st, which is, of course, our first day of summer, we're kicking off our summer sustainability emphasis, and this is with a sustainable fashion show. So there's 5 designers in Wilmington that work with vintage and repurposed recycled clothing items and create pretty high fashion out of these items. And we're going to have some of the youth from Voyage to get experience being the models, and they're walking the kind of the sidewalk of the Arboretum for their runway, and we'll be showing off these wonderful sustainably designed fashion. Fashion is a big contributor to a lot of our landfill waste, and so there's better options and we can look good and do our part for the environment. So inspired, this is a fundraiser for a new community garden called Sakota House. And so the tickets will be on sale, and you can check our website for information on that or our social media. But the tickets will be on sale as a fundraiser for Sakota House. And this is going to be on Monday, the 21st of June. Again, it's 5:30 to 8:30 in the evening.
Wonderful. This would sound like amazing
And
events.
we have something going on all the time. So link up with us on our social media and you'll get to stay informed on that. I'd love to have you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for telling us about those events, Lloyd.
Sure.
At this point, if anyone has any discussion points or questions for me or Lloyd talking about the home place or nature in New Hanover County, we would love to answer any of those that have come in or that you would like to ask now.
Kristen, I have a few questions for Lloyd, actually.
Wonderful.
So we discussed how Lanham connected with nature at a young age, and this influenced his life decisions, including his career and hobbies. Has this been true for you as well?
Yes, it has. I started out loving horticulture, gardening, worked at a tree farm at age 14, and then went off to college and studied horticulture. I was able to get A's in all of my classes. So I thought this must be for real nitwits. And I changed my major to business and graduated college and moved to Florida and went into the financial services industry. I was a licensed stockbroker in insurance sales, a banker, and I hated it. I was approaching age 30 and I saw a guy on a lawnmower outside my nice suburban office. So literally sold my BMW and bought a mobile home and moved to the country and started a tree farm. So anyway, my story was a little bit different as far as the education. It turned out good to have a degree in business as well as horticulture background because it served me well. I worked as the landscape manager at Universal, the theme park, for a number of years, and then also the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach as landscape manager. So had that good financial background to be able to manage a large organization like that, but with a real passion for doing the horticulture well. So yeah, my influence with nature has definitely led my career path, and I'm very grateful for that.
Great, thank you. Do you have any advice for children or parents to help them find their connection with nature?
Yes, just be very patient. I think it's important and I have grandchildren that I love to take on walks in the woods. And I think it's very important to let them run, jump, and play, but also to pick up rocks and look at leaves and chase lizards and whatever. I think it's very important that we don't have a real strict time frame when you are with a child in nature. Just let them explore and do, and not anything that's going to hurt themselves or others, but they definitely need the time to just dig in.
Yeah. Lanham describes his family's life of relying on the land through agriculture and the knowledge of native plants like Mamatha's remedies. Do you have any remedies of your own to share?
Yeah, so we don't have many sago palms in this area because it's a cycad, and it's typically more from the Florida zone. But I just had an experience this past weekend, and I talked with a nurseryman that I had done an experiment with about 10 years ago. And the experiment was to try to keep a cycad scale under control, scale is a very devastating, piercing, sucking insect that affects sago palms. And my hypothesis was that the caffeine in coffee grounds would be very effective in controlling the scale. And this nurseryman told me that it was their regimen to dump 2 solo cups of coffee grounds on their sago palms in nursery pots every 2 months. And they never had cycad scale again. So it's not actually bona fide research, but it sure does pique one's interest and think there's all kinds of home remedies that are out there for doing things in nature, kind of working with it instead of I'm not real big on all the synthetic pesticides that we use because I see the significant impact on our other ecosystem members, such as arthropods. I mean, insects. Insects are so important to keeping birds alive and frogs and things like that. And just because we don't like an insect doesn't mean that we need to go kill it. We may need to change our thinking a little bit and tolerate some more things. The other thing I love to preach about nature is diversity. When you have monocultures, or maybe you have a turf grass, 2 kinds of shrubs, and 1 tree, okay, you've created a smorgasbord for the pests that are going to attack those particular plants. Whereas if you have a very diverse landscape, lots of different plants and textures, you're also going to harbor the predators of those plant pests. So you're going to find there's more of a balance and equilibrium. You're not going to have as many things devastated. So always use a diversity of plant material in your landscape and you will be more successful.
Thank you, Lloyd. That's so great to know. I think we're going to wrap it up here and turn it over to Kristen.
Great. So I hope you've all enjoyed the discussion today. I think Claire is going to post real quick. I came up with a list if you're looking for more nature memoirs like The Home Place. These are some titles that are available through the library.
Let's see, there we go. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Looks great.
Perfect. So I've got a few on here. H is for Hawk is about a woman who raises a goshawk. and also deals with the death of her father. Late Migrations is about a woman who's connecting with nature as she's caring for her elderly parents. We've got some nature essays in Upstream by Mary Oliver, as well as in Deep Creek. Lab Girl is specifically about plants, as well as her relationship with her lab partner as they travel around. We got some more essays in World of Wonders. Then The Outrun by Amy Liptrot is a memoir about a woman originally from the Orkney Islands who moves to London but struggles there with some addiction issues. And so she moves back to Orkney and really connects with nature there in a personal way. And then the last one is Sparrow Envy, and that is also by the author of The Home Place, Dr. Lanham. He wrote some essays and in that book, and we have that as at the library as well. So I think you'll find that one of the main themes with a lot of nature memoirs, these books in particular, as well as The Home Place, is how connecting with nature also provides a way with us to emotionally connect with others and our own experiences, finding ways to deal with change, grief, joy, etc. And if none of these appeal to you, you can also ask a librarian for more great recommendations. We're always happy to do that here at the library. So to wrap up, if you have not read The Home Place yet, but now you're interested in it, since we've been talking about it, it is available to check out from the library. And we've also distributed copies to community partners throughout the county. Claire is going to share the link to our website about Read Across the County in the chat. So if you're interested in finding out more about events the library is hosting for Read Across the County, you can find them there. In addition to having materials to check out, like I mentioned, and the opportunities to experience nature that Lloyd mentioned, like the Arboretum, the library also has outdoor activity kits available to check out to help you and your family members explore nature all around us. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Lloyd, for this excellent conversation and for participating in Read Across the County. We'll look forward to our next virtual discussion of The Home Place, and that one is centered on the theme of family ties and history with special guest Amy Thornton, who is the Cape Fear Museum Education Manager, and that will be on July 13th at 12:30. So thank you so much, and thank you again, Lloyd. It was a really nice getting to speak with you.
My pleasure.